Have you ever finished a prayer believing you would finally find peace? But a few minutes later, your mind was once again invaded by the same worries, the same fears, and the same questions? If this happens to you, perhaps you've wondered if there's something wrong with your faith. But what if the problem isn't your prayer? What if there's a spiritual reason for this mental exhaustion that almost no one explains, and God is trying to show you something you haven't yet realized? Before we continue, there's something you need to understand. The Bible reveals a principle that explains why many people remain mentally weary even while living a life of prayer. It's not because God has stopped acting, nor because their faith is insufficient. In fact, it may be quite the opposite. Throughout this video, you will discover that God often begins to transform your inner self long before He changes the circumstances surrounding your life. Have you ever had the feeling that no matter how much you pray, your mind never finds rest? You surrender your worries to God, ask for peace, seek strength in the scriptures, but a short time later, the same thoughts return to occupy your heart. At these times, it's common to believe that there's something wrong with your own faith. But does a tired mind mean that God is distant? Or are we interpreting God's silence in the wrong way? The truth is that many people confuse spiritual peace with the absence of difficult thoughts. However, the Bible shows that men and women deeply used by God also face moments of anguish, fear, and emotional exhaustion. This did not make them less loved or less spiritual. On the contrary, it was precisely in these moments that God began a profound work in their lives. Have you ever experienced this? Then stay with me until the end, because what you are about to discover may completely change the way you see your inner weariness. And perhaps that's exactly why you found this video today. Because when we understand that we're not the only ones going through this kind of struggle, the weight starts to feel a little lighter. That's why I'd like to hear about your experience. If this topic resonates with you, write in the comments below, "My mind also needs God's rest." Or, if you prefer, share your own experiences in your own words. Often, your comment might be the answer someone else was asking God for, and without realizing it, you could strengthen the faith of someone facing the same struggle. If this message is already speaking to your heart, please also give it a like. This simple gesture helps YouTube bring this video to more people who are tired, confused, and need to hear that God has not abandoned them. And if you want to continue learning how the Bible explains human emotions and discover how God acts even in the most difficult moment of our journey, subscribe to the channel. Your participation strengthens this community and allows us to continue sharing messages of hope, faith, and transformation. Because sometimes a single word can completely change the course of someone's day and even their life. Now I want to delve even deeper into the subject. Many people believe that prayer acts as a button capable of instantly switching off all anxiety, fear, and mental fatigue. But that was never God's promise. True transformation begins when the heart learns to trust, even before circumstances change. Here lies a hidden truth that makes all the difference. There are times when we surrender a problem to God during prayer, but spend the rest of the day nurturing the same worries. Without realizing it, we take back the weight we had placed in His hands. This is exactly what happened at different points in David's journey. Even pouring out his heart before God, he faced conflicts, anguish, and difficult decisions, but he always chose to turn his mindset to trust, not despair. This inner change is what strengthened his faith along the way. Instead of resting in what God has heard, are you still carrying alone what you have already surrendered? Write in the comments, "Today I choose to trust." But there's a detail that few people realize. Not all weight makes noise. There are worries that remain hidden in the heart for so long that they begin to seem normal. These are responsibilities that never let up, guilt that insists on returning, the fear of the future, and the constant pressure to appear strong in front of everyone, even when inside, everything seems to be crumbling. The most impressive thing is that this wear and tear begins long before the body shows signs of fatigue. First, it changes the mindset, weakens hope, and influences how we face each decision on our journey. Little by little, what once seemed simple becomes heavy, and even small challenges begin to consume enormous energy. This is a truth that many ignore. The soul tends to wear down silently before the body asks for rest. Perhaps that's exactly what's happening to you right now. Write in the comments, "God knows the weight I carry." And it is precisely at this point that many people get stuck without realizing it. The mind begins to revisit the same fears, the same memories, and the same worries, creating a cycle that seems impossible to break. The more these thoughts are repeated, the more they influence emotions, decisions, and the way we see our own lives. That is why the Bible invites us to renew our minds. This renewal doesn't happen because we pretend that problems don't exist, nor because we repeat positive phrases to try to convince ourselves that everything is all right. It happens when we allow God's truth to take the place of the lies that fear insists on telling. It is a transformation that begins within and gradually changes how we react to circumstances. When the Word begins to guide our mindset, our hearts cease to be guided by fear and learn to rest in what God has already declared. Write in the comments, "I choose to renew my mind." But there's a revelation that could completely change how you see this phase of your life. Often, we spend so much time asking God to remove the problem that we fail to see what He wants to transform first within us. What if God's greatest work isn't immediately ending the storm, but strengthening your heart to weather it? The Bible shows that God rarely changes only circumstances. Before that, He works on the mindset, confidence, and faith of those who seek Him. It is this inner transformation that changes how we face challenges, make decisions, and react to difficulties. When the heart is strengthened, the problem may persist for a while, but it no longer dominates the soul in the same way. Perhaps the answer you're hoping for isn't just a change around you, but a change within you. What if God were more interested in strengthening your heart than simply removing the storm? Write in the comments, "God is strengthening my heart." There's a detail that brings great comfort when we understand this truth. You are not the first person to love God and yet face profound emotional exhaustion. Elijah reached the point of wanting to give up after great victories. David poured out words of anguish, fear, and loneliness before God in many of his psalms. Jeremiah wept, questioned, and felt the weight of the mission he had received. None of them were rejected for feeling these emotions. On the contrary, God responded to each one in a way that first restored their inner selves. To Elijah, He offered rest and care. To David, He renewed hope through His presence. To Jeremiah, He reminded him that His plans remain firm, even in the midst of suffering. These stories reveal a truth that transforms our perspective. Feeling emotionally exhausted does not mean being distant from God. In many moments, it is precisely in this place of weakness that He begins to strengthen our faith in a deeper way. Write in the comments, "God continues to take care of me." Perhaps the change you're hoping for has already begun, but in such a quiet way that it's gone unnoticed. God doesn't always reveal His work through extraordinary events. Often, true transformation happens behind the scenes of the heart. You realize that fear no longer controls all your decisions as it once did. Anxiety still tries to surface, but it no longer has the same power. Gradually, discernment emerges that helps you see situations more clearly, and a hope that doesn't depend solely on what's happening around you. It's a gradual, almost imperceptible, but profoundly real process. Trust ceases to be just an idea and begins to be part of your daily journey. These small signs often go unnoticed by those who expect immediate changes, when in fact they are evidence that God is restoring the mind even before transforming circumstances. Perhaps you are experiencing exactly this process without realizing it until now. Write in the comments, "God is restoring my mind." There comes a point in our walk with God when we realize that the greatest burden doesn't come from circumstances, but from the constant attempt to control what is beyond our strength. It is at this point that a silent transformation of mindset begins. Resting in God doesn't mean giving up on responsibilities, but recognizing that there are battles that never depended solely on us. This rest is cultivated through simple yet profound spiritual habits, setting aside moments of silence, meditating on a word, praying sincerely, and renewing day after day the decision to trust. Daily surrender doesn't eliminate all challenges, but prevents them from dominating the heart. Little by little, anxiety gives way to trust, and the mind ceases to live in a permanent state of alert. Perhaps true freedom lies not in controlling everything, but in learning to walk knowing that God remains in control, even when you don't understand all the behind-the-scenes aspects of your journey. What are you still trying to control alone? Write in the comments, "Today I choose to give up." Perhaps there's a truth you haven't yet considered. What if this period of exhaustion isn't just an obstacle, but also an invitation to draw even closer to God? This doesn't mean God causes suffering or takes pleasure in seeing you face difficult days. The Bible shows that He is able to transform even the most painful experiences into opportunities for growth, maturity, and strengthening of faith. Often, it is precisely when all our own strength is exhausted that we finally make room to trust Him completely. It is in this place that our mindset begins to change. Decisions are guided with more wisdom, and hope is reborn, even before any visible change occurs. Perhaps God isn't just trying to get you out of this phase, but to use this journey to form a firmer heart, more sensitive to His voice, and more prepared for what is yet to come. Write in the comments, God is working in me. After all that we've reflected on so far, perhaps you can see your weariness in a new light. The fact that your mind is still tired doesn't mean God has abandoned you, nor that your faith is weaker than it should be. Often, God's work happens behind the scenes of your soul, long before it produces visible changes around us. While you wait for an immediate answer, He may be strengthening your heart, renewing your mindset, and preparing you to face the journey with a confidence that didn't exist before. True transformation begins within and gradually reaches all areas of life. Therefore, don't give up just because peace hasn't arrived in the way you imagined. God continues to work, even when you can't perceive every detail of this process. And what if, after everything we've heard today, this weariness isn't the end of your story, but precisely where God has decided to begin transforming your mind? If this message has strengthened your faith, continue walking with us. Here, we continue to discover how the Word of God illuminates human emotions and reminds us at every new step that there is always hope, direction, and purpose for those who trust in Him. I hope that after this reflection, you can remember an important truth. God continues to work, even when peace has not yet fully arrived. If this message has brought a new perspective to what you are experiencing, I invite you to continue walking with me. Subscribe to the channel to follow other reflections that unite the Word of God and human emotions, always with the purpose of strengthening your faith and bringing direction to the challenges of everyday life. And if you've made it this far, leave the following phrase in the comments. That message was for me. I'll be very happy to know that you stayed until the end of this journey. If this content resonated with you, please also leave a like. This simple gesture helps this message reach other people who may be experiencing the same weariness in silence and in need of hope. And don't stop here. There's a video appearing next to this that complements everything we've discussed today. Click on it and continue with me on this journey of discovering how God speaks to our hearts, even in moments when our minds seem most weary.